This is a Voyescape podcast. You can find all of our travel podcasts from around the world at voyescape.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Travel in 10. And this week, we are going to be talking about a crazy city, a chaotic city, a city with boundless energy. And the city we're talking about this week is Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal. And great to see you, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to see you as well, Tim. And yeah, you've nailed it in terms of description. It is crazy. It is chaotic, but vibrant city. All great, local markets, city streets, UNESCO World Heritage sites. It is a great place for a jumping off point for exploring Nepal and exploring the region, and a really, really interesting city for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Crazy. I mean, crazy in all the best ways. Like it's mayhem in all the best ways. And I know that you were there very recently, so maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was there on a tour organized by a company called Explore Himalaya, who'd set up a tour for me to explore Kathmandu for a few days, and then also go out and do some trekking and explore one of the national parks down on the other end of Nepal, Chitwan National Park, which was fantastic as well. They set me up at a place called Barahi Jungle Lodge up there, which I'm sure we'll talk about probably Chitwan National Park at another podcast, but. The few days in Kathmandu were, well, one thing I will say right off the top is it was not at all what I expected. It was a much different city than I was expecting to find. I mean, I know lots of people who had gone up and done trekking tours in Nepal. They had gone and done Everest Base Camp or some of the other experiences that you can have. I guess it was just this image I had in my mind of sort of a serene, peaceful Buddhist country with all of these trekking experiences that you could have, and that's certainly part of the experience in Nepal. But Kathmandu is nothing like that. It is a full-on urban jam-packed experience. Very busy city, a lot of activity, a lot going on. It was in many ways more of what I would have expected to find in somewhere like Sri Lanka or India, and a lot of similarities between Sri Lanka and India and some of what I experienced there, for sure.
For sure. Do I remember correctly, their time zone, I just thought of this, is their time zone like 15 minutes off of India? Did I just make that up?
I'm not sure that maybe.
Yeah. I think I remember being on the plane flying from Delhi, and it's setting my watch ahead 15 minutes, but again, that may be incorrect. But when I was there, it was kind of an accidental trip. I was in central India, and I was doing a tiger safari there, and saw lots of Royal Bengal tigers. It was an amazing experience, luxury, upscale. And I was going to a conference in the Middle East and set to fly home and then fly back. And I thought, well, why don't I find somewhere that I can cool my heels, for a little bit, for a few days. And I've always been enchanted by, John Krakauer's book, Into Thin Air, and all the stuff about Everest. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go spend a few days in Kathmandu. And that's how I ended up in Nepal. I think I was there for maybe the better part of a week. So do you have, what are your things to do in Kathmandu?
I mean, certainly the historic nature of the city. I mean, it's got 7 UNESCO World Heritage sites in and around the city, and I mean, you could spend a couple of days just exploring that. I mean, some of the ones that really jumped out to me, there was the largest sort of Tibetan Buddhist temple in the city, Stupa, called Boudhanath, I believe is the pronunciation. Stupa was definitely something that worth seeing. This huge sort of central square in the city that's got this massive Tibetan Buddhist temple. Some great restaurants surrounding it. We had a great lunch overlooking at Stupa View Restaurant and Cafe. But probably the most unique area was around Durbar Square, where you've got one of the royal palaces there. You've also got something that was really unique, which was the living goddess, a young girl who's worshipped as a incarnation
Wow.
of one of the Hindu goddesses, who is there in Kumarigar in Durbar Square, where they select a new living goddess every few years. I can't remember the age at which someone becomes a living goddess, but I know once they reach puberty, they're no longer the living goddess. A new one is
Okay.
selected,
Okay.
and they live there in this sort of specially appointed sort of temple where they're kept, and sort of daily she comes out, does sort of a greeting with the crowd and whoever's there, and then back in, and it was just such a unique part of the local culture. But you certainly see like the mix of Hinduism, Buddhism in all of the sort of temples and historic sites throughout the city. Another one that jumped out to me, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, it was one of the oldest Hindu temples in the city, and a place where right on the banks of the Bagmati River, it's called Pashupatnadi, I believe is and it's also a place where many people go to be cremated. You'll see families there doing cremation ceremonies, people's ashes then being put into the Bagmati River. A very unique cultural experience that you won't find many other places in the world, and just so much to see and do there, and seeing that really the Hindu culture, Buddhist culture, really side by side, and all of these historic sites that are so well preserved throughout the city. There had been, I mean, I imagine you would have seen the impacts of this as well when you were there, Tim. They had a large earthquake that hit the city in, I believe, the early 2000s. And as a result of that, each of these individual, UNESCO World Heritage sites are under various stages of restoration, but being restored by hand, and where they've got local artisans and local people who are going and hand carving each of the entranceways or doors to a temple in the original style that they had been done, and bringing in people from the same villages or even the same families in some cases that had originally built some of these things hundreds or thousands of years ago, who are there by hand painstakingly restoring each of these UNESCO World Heritage sites. So really protecting that cultural heritage seems to be a huge part of the culture there. How about for you? What jumped out?
Well, I mean, for sure, going and seeing the funeral pyres, on the Bagmati River was something that I'll never forget. I mean, it's something you don't see in the West. Basically, piles of the deceased, being burned, and then their ashes, being sent into this sacred river. I saw it also in Varanasi in India, and that's definitely a really interesting cultural experience to have. For me, I love all things Everest. I mean, I've never been to base camp, and I've never done, obviously, maybe not obviously, but I've never climbed Everest. But I wanted to see Everest. That was one of my goals when I was there, and so I went on flight. There was a small local airline I believe it was called Buddha Air, and they do tourist flights to Mount Everest. And you don't land, you fly around near the summit, and you can see the summit very clearly. And they even let you, I mean, on my flight, I don't know if they still do this, but they let us come up into the cockpit even and get a better view out the front windows, and get photos out the front windows. So, that was a thrill for me, because you can see, that truly iconic peak, that you've seen. I've seen so many times in photographs, in films, this image that is almost ubiquitous, but to see it in person, just over there, and it's so high, that the jets, I think it's the jet stream, just blows the snow off the top sometimes, and so that was definitely a thrill for me. So that was the number one.
Well, I have to give a shout out to Buddha Air as well, because like you, I mean, I didn't have enough time to do the base camp trek, which I really would have liked to have done. Yeah. But really, you're in Nepal, you want to see Mount Everest if there's any way you can. And I had also discovered the Buddha Air flights out of Kathmandu. The first morning we went out, it was beautiful in Kathmandu itself, but as soon as we got up over the mountains, it was socked in and you couldn't see anything. and we didn't get any view of the mountains. But the great thing was, as soon as we landed, there were representatives from Boudhanath right there as we touched down. They gave you an option that you could either come back the next morning or later in the week if you were staying around in the city, or they would have refunded the full cost of your flight because it was an Everest sightseeing flight. So they felt if you didn't see Everest, you got your money back. I ended up being able to book the next morning to go again. And again, it was a beautiful morning in Kathmandu. We got over the mountains and stunning views of the Himalayas this time. We could see just, the valleys, the mountains, and it was a beautiful flight. But as we got to Everest itself, once again, we weren't able to see Everest. But again, they refunded the flight. So, because we didn't get Everest itself, even though we'd seen the rest of the Himalayas and we had this incredible sightseeing flight, they still refunded the flight for everyone who was on board. So I thought that was fantastic that they were as accommodating.
Yeah, that's very fair. I mean, it really is very fair because they could say, rain or shine, you get on the plane, you get what you get, So that is very fair. Any accommodations that you like?
Yeah, I stayed right in the main sort of central tourist district in a brand new hotel, the Aloft hotel there, which was great. I mean, they had a really nice spa. They had a nice infinity pool up on the roof, very, very centrally located. All around it are streets where you can get any of your, if you're going out trekking, you don't need to bring anything. You've got all your trekking equipment stores, mountain gear stores all around, lots of great restaurants and stuff all around there as well. So it was super convenient from that perspective. And then there was another one called Dwarka Hotel that I had a chance just to go look around a little bit. Very sort of luxury heritage hotel with a lot of traditional Nepali architecture, wood carvings, ambience. Would have been a great place to stay as well. And then a third one that I just stopped in for a dinner at that was called Boudhanath Kathmandu, that's owned by the same chain that runs the Taj hotels across India. It was a little out of the central tourist district of town, but it was a very nice hotel, had a great rooftop bar, and what really stood out there was their rooftop restaurant. Served like fusion Asian and Western dishes, modern, creative, and really just stunning panoramic views of the city up there. One of the best views that I saw when I was there as well. How about you? Where did you stay when you were in town?
Well, I will say, Hyatt Regency is a solid option. I always like my Hyatt hotels, so that's a good one.
And it's huge. Like it had massive grounds.
And it's been there for a while. I think it was kind of the original sort of 4-star hotel in Kathmandu, and Hyatt standards across the boards. The place where I spent most of my nights, I would not recommend. I'm not going to say the name of the hotel because it still exists. I looked it up. It is still in business. I had gone. It was the biggest difference between luxury and non-luxury back-to-back that I've ever had in my life and my career. So I went from, you were talking about Taj. I was on a tiger safari, central India with Taj, super, super high end. But, I had a private villa with a dedicated butler. So it was like almost uncomfortable. Like, I mean, I don't mind butler service, but I'd eat breakfast and I'd sip 2 sips of coffee and he would come over and like pour 2 sips worth of coffee back in and then stand against the wall, and I got to the where he would come over and chat with me and it wasn't so much a stiff relationship, but we could actually chat. And he was actually Nepali. So he gave me lots of tips because I was headed to Kathmandu after that. When I went to Kathmandu, I booked a hotel that had very good reviews online. And the basic room was $6 a night. And I upgraded to their top suite for $12. And they said, we'll pick you up at the airport, which they did, in a van that had holes in the bottom of it. You could see the road through there, and got to the hotel and got to my room. And out one window, I had a nightclub that never seemed to stop. So out the other window, barking dogs. So, we had diversity of sound. And then for some reason, the bathroom floor was always wet. There was no discernible source of this moisture. It was just always there. It was just always wet. And so they did, I believe, concede that point because they put a pair of very well-worn, hotel-owned flip-flops at the door. So they were like, we understand that it's wet. Here's a pair of 6-year-old flip-flops that have been worn by 212 guests before, and you feel free to use that while you're in the bathroom. So I recommend the Hyatt Regency. I would say, just go for something solid. And it's a busy city, it's a crazy city, it's a place that is a feast for the senses in many ways, but sometimes it's nice to go back and just have kind of a quiet, clean place to rest your head at night. So,
well, that's funny because
anyway.
I had like the opposite experience coming from where I had been in quite like very basic accommodations in Sri Lanka just before arriving, and then got to the Aloft in Thamel, which is the main tourist district of town. Lots of great restaurants around it, and just such a like well organized, non-chaotic hotel. It was a very nice respite from where I had been previously.
That's perfect. That's where I go to your hotel. Don't go to the one where I went to. No, not at all. Yeah. Yeah.
Any final tips, can't misses, that jump to mind for you?
For sure, any way you can get to see Everest is the thing. I actually hired a driver who actually drove me out to the edge of the Himalayas. We couldn't see Everest from there, but it was very interesting because he took me to a local restaurant. I was able to chat with the people who ran the restaurant. I don't remember the name of the restaurant now, but and Todd, the driver spoke quite good English. So in addition to getting this experience of getting to the edge of the Himalayas and seeing them as they kind of rise on the horizon and go from foothills to these classic, snow-capped peaks that we're used to, having that experience where you're one-on-one with somebody who is from there and can talk about growing up in Kathmandu and can talk about what it is to be Nepali. It's a very interesting country because they have this mix of Hinduism and Buddhism, but they get along very, very well. These two religions. So for me, that was it was the natural wonders that I was seeing, but at the end of the day, my favorite part was having a chance to sit down, for a few hours, in the car and chat with this fellow. So. What about you?
Yeah, two things jump to mind. I mean, not unlike you. I mean, I would say having a local guide makes a huge difference there, and it's really cost effective as well.
Yeah.
And there's lots of Western companies that do tours of Nepal, but you're going to find they all work with local providers, and if you can get directly to some of the local tour companies and book directly with them, quite a bit less expensive. The one that I went with, Explore Himalaya, took extremely good care of me. They were a locally owned local company, and met me at the airport, arranged all accommodations, everything, and local guide to go around to those UNESCO heritage sites and really give you insights into the history and the culture and everything that you were seeing. It made a huge difference, and highly recommend trying to find one of those local tour companies and working together with them on planning your trip. And then one thing that I kind of an unexpected thing was the coffee culture there. They love latte art, was like super popular throughout the city. There's a chain of I don't know if I ever saw a Starbucks, but they had their own local equivalent called Himalayan Java, locally owned chain that had locations all throughout the city. And I wish I could remember the name of the mall, but there was a mall not far from where I was staying where they had a large Himalayan Java location overlooking the city, great high-speed Wi-Fi and really good food in addition to coffee and coffee art. But then just below it, they had a barista school where they trained the baristas for all of their locations. But as a tourist, you could also sign up to do a day-long, a week-long, or even a month-long coffee course, barista course, where they would teach you to do this, intricate latte art. They would do, elephants and various different designs and things that they would do, and that you could go take classes there at Himalayan Java as well. So that was kind of a cool, unexpected one that I found.
That sounds super cool. And again, a chance to interact with local culture and local people. And I love a good cup of coffee. I had 3 cups of coffee this morning. So that sounds amazing.
Definitely, I would say it's definitely Kathmandu, a jumping off point, right? It's a place where you're going to go to really get into the mountains, go out and explore some of the national parks, some of the places in the Himalayas, but a great city to sort of base yourself and go out and do some of those great once in a lifetime trekking type experiences for sure.
Absolutely. And a place to really embrace the mayhem, right? You go out there and just let it overwhelm your senses. I feel like that's the case in India, many of the big cities in India as well. Just go out there and embrace all the energy and the mayhem and the the busyness and just let it wash over you. It's really an incredible feeling. Yeah.
Sounds great. Well, if people are enjoying the podcast and finding some of the information that we're sharing useful, would ask that they a huge help to us if you can go on and drop a review for the podcast on the Apple Podcast Store or Spotify or wherever you're listening to our podcasts. Also, if you jump onto our website at voyescape.com, you're going to find a bunch more information on all the destinations that we're talking about, including downloadable guides with our recommended itineraries for different cities that we've been talking about throughout the season as well, which just gives you an easy way to plan your trip and sort of take some of the information that we share here on the podcasts and use it as a jumping off point to plan your own exploration around the world.
Absolutely. Always great to chat with you, David, and looking forward to our next destination next
Sounds
week.
Great. Look forward to catching up next week. Thanks, Jim.
Sounds good. Thanks, David.
This is a Voyescape podcast. You can find all of our travel podcasts from around the world at voyescape.com.